Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the world's most emotionally draining vocal works. Because we just did the orchestral works, and I told you there's more coming, and chamber music is coming too. Don't worry. And what's coming is the least emotionally draining orchestral works. So we're going to have a very good time with this particular concept over the next few days. I know that, in decades hence, it won't matter, but just for today, let's just say, or so people know the context, this is 4th of July weekend. And I don't know who's around, and I don't care. I just want to have a good time. I want to give you some stuff to keep you occupied, especially if you have to go and hang out with family members that you'd rather be elsewhere. So, you've got an opportunity to say, I need 25 minutes, guys. See you later, 20 minutes. I'll be back. Bye. And you can watch emotionally draining music videos. So, you were wonderful with the last effort at emotional drainage, but now we're really doing it because now we've got drainage with words. And drainage with words makes a huge bit of difference. And it's harder, actually, because, there's so much that's just plain miserable. So many terrible things that are supposed to be emotionally gut-wrenching. I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, you really should put in Zimmermann's Die Soldaten or the Requiem for a Dead Poet. And he's right, because those are absolutely harrowing, gut-wrenching pieces. Or Penderecki's The Devils of Loudun. Ooh, you ever heard that? Whoa. That stuff is, Prokofiev's The Fiery Angel. These are expressionist nightmares, these pieces. But when I think of emotionally draining, I like to think of emotionally draining of not just horror and misery and terror. I love those things. Don't get me wrong. I like horror movies. There's something to be said for that. There really is. But I think it requires a little bit more, shall we say, art and imagination to be emotionally draining in a variety of emotions, number one. And number two, the powerful ones, the negative ones, the horrifying ones, the tragic ones. I think they have more impact when they're in a context which allows for their opposites, which allows us to feel the full range of emotions. And then it really, comes home and getcha. So here are the vocal equivalents. My top 10 vocal ones. You ready? Number 1, Bach, the St. Matthew Passion. Now, I know a lot of you are going to snicker because I've told you how many times I don't really like the St. Matthew Passion. But one of the reasons I don't like the St. Matthew Passion is just because it's incredibly long and it's incredibly gut-wrenching. It's like Zimmermann's Die Soldaten. It's 3.5 hours of misery and darkness. It's a sad story, and Bach just lays it on with a trowel. The reason I include the St. Matthew Passion, first of all, is for that reason. You cannot ignore it. It's an incandescently great piece of music. It is the greatest passion setting ever, of course, if you care about those things. And it has that opening chorus. The opening chorus and the closing chorus, for that matter. Wow. If those aren't two of the greatest choruses ever imagined by anyone, I don't know what are. They are beyond glorious. And everything in the middle, my favorite part of the St. Matthew Passion is one bar. Barabam! It's like a wonderful tritone when the chorus screams, Barabam! When the crowd chooses Barabbas, and Bach sets it to a grinding tritone dissonance. It just goes to show you that Bach had no inhibitions where this was concerned. He was absolutely making sure that you feel this text in your gizzard. And you do. And for that reason, it absolutely has to be in there. It is a masterpiece. It really is. And there are moments when I'm up for it. But they're very few and far between, only because of the intensity of the work. It's not because, I think anything less of it. It's me. It's me. I find it a very, very difficult work to take in large quantities. And it's because of its emotional intensity. It's not because there's something wrong with the music. There really isn't. And I admit that. I admit to that failing. So there you go. The St. Matthew Passion. Number 2, Strauss's Elektra. the most neurotic opera anybody ever wrote. I mean, it's in one act. It's unbelievably intense. It has, excuse me while I itch there, allergy season. Isn't it wonderful? It's a great story. It's a wonderful libretto, and the music is psychotic, absolutely psychotic. I saw a live recording of Elektra. I don't know if any of you were there, but it was at Carnegie Hall with the Vienna Philharmonic, conducted with Lauren Mazel, and they took it on tour in a concert version with this sort of giant, like the prow of a ship, it looked like, built above the orchestra. So the singers were like on this thing, which I was like praying, please don't fall, please don't collapse and kill all the violins, you know. And at one point, like the lights went off in the violin section, you know, and they were flickering on and off, but it didn't hold them back a minute. It was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen in my life. When it was over, you just were like, you just sat there like with your jaw agape. It was terrifying. It was gut-wrenching. It was thrilling. It is such an amazing opera. I mean, I've seen it many times on stage too. And it's just wonderful, absolutely fabulous. And you know, emotionally, it is, what can I say? When it's over, you've really been put through a ringer. And people don't give Strauss credit for doing that. You know, they tend to say that he's kind of a lightweight and that, you know, emotionally he's kind of cheap and sensational. Well, yes, he was all of those things, but he was also a fabulous dramatist. It is probably the only Strauss opera that ends at the ending. In other words, it doesn't like the plot ends and the music keeps going 10 minutes longer than it's supposed to. Not here. Not here. It is entirely of a piece. And my God, is it thrilling. And it just leaves you like a limp rag when it's over. So that's number 2. Number 3, Wagner, Tristan and Isolde. Now, Tristan and Isolde, of course, I mean, you know, this is the opera that killed people just performing it. I mean, you know, if it can kill the tenor in real life, then you know that it's very draining. It's very draining. It is very emotionally draining, but it needs to be performed exceptionally well because it has dead spots. It really has dead spots. You know, King Mark in Act 2, you know, when they find, first of all, there's Brangaine, who does nothing but scream about, like, you know, you sure you guys want to be doing this? Something may happen. You know, and she does that 50 times. And then finally King Mark shows up. And there's this, you know, 25-minute long guilt trip. Oh, Tristan, your father told me when, you know, you were just a little boy that I should take care of you, and I tried to, and now look at what you're doing. You're screwing around with the woman who's supposed to be my wife, and I can't even begin to tell you how disappointed that makes me, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try. I'm going to tell you in excruciating detail for the next 25 minutes just how disappointed I am in you, Tristan. And then, of course, Merlot comes running on and they fight for 15 seconds. It's the only action in the entire second act. And then Tristan, of course, you know the story, right? It's a tricky piece to bring off. It works. It works fabulously well on stage. I remember, you know, thinking we get to know it from recordings, many of us, because, you know, how often do you get to go see it? And you think to yourself, oh God, this is going to be awful. It's never going to work because nothing happens in it. And Wagner even said so. He was the first one to say, gee whiz, how are they going to stage this? Nothing happens. But it works. It's great on stage. It sounds absolutely terrific. And the characters are great. And the music is thrilling. And so, yeah, when it's done well, that Liebestod, whoa, baby, it is as emotionally fulfilling and draining as anything out there. It's amazing. So Tristan and Isolde has to be on the list. Next, Verdi's Requiem. Yeah, now I could have picked several Verdi operas. I really could have, because, I mean, there are wonderful Verdi operas that are unbelievably powerful and affecting. They really are, starting with like Rigoletto onwards. The ones before that, well, some of those too, actually. You know, Joan of Arc is fabulous, and Simone Boccanegra in either version is fabulous, and you know, Nabucco is fabulous. I mean, there really are great pieces that are enormously powerful. But I think the Requiem sort of sums it all up in 90 minutes, which is a good thing. You know, short is good. If it achieves drainage, in a short amount of time, I am all for it, because I don't think drainage should take forever, as it sometimes does with like Wagner, who we just talked about. But the Verdi Requiem really does. It runs the whole gamut of emotions, even joy. In the Sanctus. I mean, is there anything happier than that brief Sanctus chorus, this riot of joyful noise, and then you're back to, Requiem stuff. It's just an amazing piece that way, and I adore it for that reason. And so the Verdi Requiem is definitely up there, and it's 1, 2, 3. Number 4. Number 5. Puccini's Madame Butterfly. Come on, admit it. You can't see it without crying at the end. It's the saddest opera. Oh my God, it's so sad. It's so beautifully realized. It's so melodically intense. My goodness, those tunes just stab you in the gut. It's unbelievable that way. Glorious, glorious work. And just, it's another one of those, you've got to wring your handkerchief out, and it's gonna be saturated with sweat and tears and all kinds of things. I mean, really, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful, pulverizingly sad work. It really is, and I mean, it's gorgeous. And I find it also very difficult to listen to, because it's just so powerful. It's so emotionally direct and unflinching. But there's even more after that. We'll get to it momentarily. A couple more. Mahler Symphony No. 2, which I put in with vocal works because, of course, it has an entire song and movement, and then a whole choral thing with a couple soloists. Mahler 2, of course, is not depressing. It's thrilling. It's exalting. And one of you wrote in the comments, that you thought it belonged in the first bunch of emotionally draining works because you found it so shattering and it just had you stunned. And that's what it does. That's absolutely what it does. If you ever go see Mahler 2 live, and you should, wherever you can see it, and if they do it right, there's always an if, it's going to knock your socks off. It absolutely blow you away. I think maybe the most moving performance I saw was at my college graduation at Johns Hopkins. Because I was at WJHU, I had access to I was doing reviews of, even back then when I was in college in the 1970s and early 80s. And so I was able to get comp tickets. And I was able to get tickets to see Mahler 2 with Rostropovich and the National Symphony. And it was my high school graduation. I was with my brother and with my grandmother, neither of whom were like Mahler people. Although my grandmother, for reasons I've never understood, had a little record collection with like all kinds of crazy like bossa nova albums. She and my grandfather were ballroom dancers, and they won all these competitions and things doing ballroom dancing. And they had the Bruno Walter Mahler 2. What that was doing there, I have no clue, but they had it. So anyway, they were doing Mahler 2, and I was able to get tickets to the president's box, where the president sits when he's there. And it was just an unbelievably intense performance. Brilliant and exciting as all hell, and full of just unbelievable passion. And I remember when the chorus came in, my grandmother, who was actually losing her hearing, but she just said, "Oh my." And I said, yeah, that wonderful pianissimo entrance. It just blows you away. The piece just blows you away. And it is emotionally the full package, from the depths of the blackest tragedy to the most transcendental spiritual ecstasy. It's all there. Mahler 2. Yeah. Next, let's go from that to something a little more depressing. Berg Wozzeck, the most moving, deeply sympathetic opera. My goodness, it's so heartfelt. It's so full of sympathy and poignancy, and the ending is so crushing, with the now orphan Wozzeck's child and Marie's child playing with his little horse, and all the kids running off to see his mother's corpse, and he's just sitting there. Oh my God, it's devastating. I still think, frankly, I know that there are like later expressionist works and avant-garde works that are like louder and even more like disgusting in what happens. They're more violent, they're more bloody, they're more this or more that. But I don't think there's anything that's more devastating emotionally than that last image of this child with his hobby horse alone on the stage, and the way that the music simply stops in the middle of a phrase. It's inexpressible. It really is an unbelievable work of genius. So yeah, Wozzeck. And we're coming down to the last three. Number 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, yep, number 8. Schubert's Die Winterreise. Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. This is so bleak. I mean, it's such an unbelievably wretched piece of music. I mean, wretched not in terms of the music, but in terms of the story and how it leaves you feeling. I think that last song, Der Leiermann, there's nothing like it. There's nothing. It's so devastating in its unadorned simplicity, the absolute perfection of despair and hopelessness. In that tiny little song, it just encapsulates Schubert's genius. And of course, we know that he was sick and he was going to die soon. And yeah, it has so many. It has such a mythos surrounding it. But it really is an extraordinary piece. But more than just that last song, it really does run the full gamut of emotions. Everything is in this piece. There's a whole world there. And yes, it's going to end, with total depression and sorrow and hopelessness. But on the way, Schubert takes you to happy heights and sorrowful depths, and it's all there. And he does it in his own way, and he does it in a wholly unique way through songs, through a collection of songs. It's just amazing, and it has to be on the list. Absolutely has to be on the list. I warn you about Die Winterreise, though. It is not a piece of music that you just go and say, oh, let's listen to Die Winterreise. I had a hard day at work, No. You prepare yourself, you sit down, take it in pieces. If you're a newbie, if you don't know the music well, you really need to give it a chance and get to know it and read the poems. Really read the poems. Understand where it's going. Understand the story. And then it should really make its full impact. It's another work, like the St. Matthew Passion. I don't listen to it very often because I just think it's really too intense. And I think it's a mistake for works like that, the way we have them now, to get hauled out every 5 minutes and tossed off as though they're just, penny candy, as though they're just normal. They're not normal. They're extraordinary. They're absolutely extraordinary, and they need to be treated that way. And it's the same thing with Mahler, too. These are pieces that are events. And if they're not going to be an event, you really shouldn't waste your time with it, because it cheapens, it coarsens the whole experience. And I want the whole enchilada. Even with the St. Matt, when I'm ready for it, I want him to let me have it. That's why I love the Klemperer performance, by the way. Okay, anyway, last two, and they're both operas. And I'll bet some of you have guessed what they are, but we'll see. Poulenc, Dialogues of the Carmelites. I mean, is there anything more intensely draining than that last scene, that Salve Regina, which is heart-stoppingly beautiful, being sung by all of the women of that convent as they are getting beheaded one by one by one by one until there's only one left, and off she goes to meet her doom. Wow. And the best thing about it is that the end is really the end. She goes, in seculorum, ka-chunk. And then there's just da, 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 dum, bum, 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 bum. That's the whole ending. I just did it. That's it. There isn't another note. Poulenc understood when the end came and how to end it. And that's what makes the piece so emotionally powerful. Unfortunately, if it were Richard Strauss, they would still be singing 20 minutes later, or there would be a scene in heaven. Who knows what he would do? Yeah, this is not a note out of place. And it is such a devastating piece of music, but also a hopeful one. It's about Blanche, who who gains her courage. She learns acceptance. She comes to find a purpose. I mean, she starts out life as this noble, spoiled little French, twitlet, and winds up a heroine of sorts. Someone who's able to accept, the ultimate sacrifice. And that's really something. It's unbelievably moving. It's heart-stoppingly beautiful. So Dialogues of the Carmelites is number 9. And number 10, you ready? Janacek's Jenufa. I've used a bit of it. I did a little video called The Most Harrowing 5 Minutes of Opera or something like that, where I did, Kostelnichka's scene from Act 2 of Jenufa. And for those of you who don't know Jenufa, well, I mean, it's a village opera. It takes place in a Czech village, and Jenůfa is pregnant by Števa, who's a jerk, and she's loved by László, who's Števa's half-brother. And Števa is a drunken fool who finally is not accepted in the army so that they can get married. And Janáček's foster mother is this woman called Kostelnička, who is, the Wicked Witch of the West in a dress and with a cross. She's very, very stern and vain and self-righteous. And László is, Janáček teases him, and so he slashes her cheek. And when he slashes her cheek, she's no longer beautiful, and Števa, who is as shallow as they come, refuses to marry her. And that's Act 1. And then in Act 2, she has this baby, and she's been kept shut up through the whole winter in the Kostelnička's house. And the Kostelnička is sitting around praying that this baby's going to die so that she won't be shamed and Jenůfa won't be shamed and she can cover the whole thing up. And she decides to hurry it along when the baby looks too healthy. And so she stuffs the baby under the ice in the river and kills it and arranges a marriage between László, who slashed Jenůfa, who's just been told her baby's dead. And she arranges the marriage because Števa finds out that Jenůfa's had a baby and doesn't care for her, and he's going to marry now. He doesn't want to be disgraced. He's marrying the mayor's daughter, Karolka. And László, doesn't want the baby either, which is why the Kostelnička kills it. But he still loves Jenůfa and is sorry that he slashed her. And Jenůfa is totally numb from finding out that her baby has just died and she's supposed to be engaged to László, and they're going to get married. So Act 3, it's springtime and they're getting married, and this ice thaws, and guess who pops to the surface? You got it. And the whole story comes out. That's what you need to know. The whole story comes out. The Kostel, they're going to try, the townspeople want to kill Jenůfa because she says it's her baby, and they feel she killed it in order to avoid the shame. But the Kostelnička comes forward and accepts responsibility, and Jenůfa forgives her as she's led off to prison. And she says to László, this is the part that gets you. She says to László, now you go too. You can't link your life with mine. You just can't do it. I'm shamed. I'm disgraced. The whole village thinks it's this, my foster mothers are murderous. You can't possibly want to marry me. And he says to her, I don't care. As long as we have each other, that's all that matters. And Jenůfa turns to him, realizing that she loves him. And it's actually a hopeful ending, but not a shallow one. And that's the point. The thing about Jenůfa is, even though my recitation of the story may sound crazy or humorous or whatever it is, these characters are so real. Their suffering is real. Their motivations are real. And it's so true emotionally. Janáček was one of those composers who just went straight to the heart of things and just ripped it out. I mean, he couldn't write an insincere note. And this story is fabulous, but it's the music that does it. The music is heartbreaking and at the very end transcendent. It's one of the most amazing theatrical experiences I've ever seen. And even if you're not in the theater, you just listen to it on disc, you just listen to a recording, it just blows you away. You have to follow the words. You have to know what they're saying. But my God, what a piece of music that is, and what a story, and what just an enormous outpouring of compassion for these people and their lives, and the beauty of forgiveness, and the overpowering belief in the ultimate conquest of love. and over all of the stupidity and mistakes that people make, the fallibility. It's just one of the most emotionally gripping things you'll ever see in your life. It will leave you a puddle of nothingness when it's over. And so I wish to end, it is appropriate to end this talk on vocal drainage with a puddle. That's where the drainage winds up, as a puddle. And so keep on listening, friends. Get your vocal drainage and come back for more. There's more to come. Take care.